Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm here with Mel Patching. Hi Mel, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Hi, I'm really great and I'm excited to be talking to you today.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. You've been on my podcast before and now we're here talking about something completely different. I wanted to ask you, how did your newfound interest in tea develop, or have you always loved tea?
Few people have asked me this. So I grew up drinking tea the British way. My mom would make us black tea, breakfast tea with milk and sugar as kids. And that was like our wake up ritual. I didn't really like it. And then when I was a teenager, we were in South Africa for a holiday and we went to a Chinese restaurant and I drank green tea for the first time. So this was completely different. Like it's a whole leaf, no milk, no sugar. I remember having the feeling of, I can breathe for the first time because I've been suffering with asthma for so long. And it turns out that because like there was no milk, I wasn't having milk like every day, I had an impact on my asthma. So I loved it and I loved the taste and I loved how refreshed I felt when I drank it. So from then on, I bought green tea bags and I told my mother she has to buy them for me. But then it wasn't until I moved to China. When I was moving there, I asked my friends which is the best tea district, and they said Fujian. So I lived in Xiamen, which is very famous for white tea and a lot of different types of tea. And we drank tea like all the time because you would just go down the street and there was a tea shop on every corner and you could go in and drink tea for free. They would give you like 10 different teas to try. You don't have to pay anything. It's amazing. So catching up with friends is always in a tea shop. And then in Hong Kong, we didn't have, like, I couldn't find anywhere where I could drink tea for free for so long. So I decided to learn to brew it myself. And that's how I started. Yeah. That's
cool. So you work at Plantation Tea Room and then you have Instagram page at lets.have.tea.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about how both of those came about. How did you come to work at Plantation Tea Room and when did you start your Instagram page?
Okay, so Plantation Tea Room, I found out about them because it's probably one of the best places just dedicated to purely tea. It's not a cafe where you rush in, grab a cup of tea, chug it down, on to the next thing. You sit there and they give you a kettle and they give you a bottle of water and they give you all the equipment and you pour your own tea, because loose leaf tea, it can actually be brewed at least 6 to 7 times per portion. So instead of having a bag that's just like a quick whip in and out, you can actually spend hours enjoying your tea and enjoying the flavor profile change as you drink it. So when I went in there, I was just overwhelmed. Exactly everything that I wanted to learn. And I grabbed the boss. Her name is Nana Chan. She's so amazing. She's like designed the whole thing. She also runs Tika, which is a famous tea shop in Shewan. I said to her, I really want to brew tea. I want to learn how to brew tea really well. Can I volunteer here? And in return of like washing up or serving customers, I could get like a few lessons in brewing tea. She's like, sure. So I did that for a few days. And then she was like, you know what? You're really great with the customers. And why don't you just like work here part-time? So that's what I'm doing, which is super rewarding. I love it.
Oh, that's so cool. And how long have you been working there?
For about 3 months.
Oh, okay, cool. So
yeah,
the reason you're on this podcast is because I read one of your posts on Facebook and it was really just so impactful. Like it was just, oh my God, this girl is full of wisdom and she's wrapping it all around tea. And I just thought, this is so cool. So I want to talk a little bit really around what you wrote in that post. And one of the things that you said is that tea teaches you the art of being in the here and now. Talk to me a bit about that and why is it important?
Yeah, definitely. I think because when you brew tea in a Chinese style or a non-Western style, you're forced to slow down because you have to wait for the kettle to boil. And then you don't want to put boiling water straight on the leaves. So you wait for the water to cool down to the correct temperature. And then you wait for the tea to brew for the correct amount of time. And then you pour out the tea and you serve it. Because it's hot, you can't just chug it down, you know? So it's something that just, if you want to enjoy the flavor to its maximum, you have to slow down, especially when brewing it, right? So it just can't be rushed. And there's so many times where I've tried to rush my tea and it turns out it ends up like really bitter or really bland. And yeah, I can't get a great flavor from it. So, and it forces you to pay attention to it. And I think that's what really helps, because I guess being here, being present, as I like many people call it, is something I've tried to really cultivate in my life. But unless I have, you know, tea just makes it easier because my body, I physically feel like, oh, I really want a cup of tea right now. And so I'll make one, but that ritual is there, like forcing me to slow down, getting present to my senses. How does it taste? How does it smell? And that's just now become a natural part of my day. Whereas before, I would try to schedule in meditation sessions into my days, and I never followed through. Like I would do it for 2 days and then I would stop, you know. So tea is actually getting me to slow down every day, which is good.
So do you see tea as kind of a meditation and a way to improve your well-being and to calm your mind?
Yeah, definitely. I think it actually achieves that in 2 ways. First of all, physically, tea is, you know, the properties that it has theanine in it, which is an amino acid that's proven to actually reduce stress and anxiety. And then it also is very clarifying for the mind. So they've done studies on people who drink tea at least once a day have, you know, that's been proven to reduce dementia when you get older by 50%. And like Alzheimer's, about like 80 something, 86% or something, I think I saw. So it actually has a physical impact on your body to calm you down and to clear your mind. And then, but the actual act of brewing tea and serving tea and enjoying tea, I talk to so many people about why they love tea and their tea memories. And it's always like, oh, it was the one time when our busy day, kind of all the family came together. We sat around the table, we had a cup of tea. It's such a heartwarming phrase, like, let me put the kettle on, because it shows that people are going to come together and slow down and be with each other.
Are you British?
Yes.
You're British, and tea is a really strong inherent part of British culture, but do you think it really spreads across many other cultures as well? And do you think it's something that people can really learn to love, even if it's not something that they've grown up with?
Completely. I think tea is a global beverage. I think they say it's the most drunk beverage apart from water. So it's like the second most popular beverage in the world. And I think it's grown in more than 50 countries. So, of course, China is where tea originated from. It's very deeply embedded in Chinese medicine and also in Buddhism. There's the Cha Dao, which is the way of tea. Japan, super strong, like all over Asia, you'll have very strong tea cultures. And then, Africa as well, Kenya, Malawi, all these places grow tea. And I love, how each culture puts their own spin on it. So Mongolia, you get butter tea, and actually they ferment their leaves because they need to keep them for so long. And because in Mongolia, their diet is like milk and meat and dairy, basically no veg. But they've studied it, and the nutrients in the fermented tea actually completes their nutrition profile. So it actually kind of substitutes for the veggies.
Yeah, I've had that tea in Mongolia. It's really quite nice. Yeah. I had it in a yurt in Mongolia. It was very cool.
It must have been a very memorable experience.
It was an amazing experience. We went on a school trip, so we had a bunch of students. So we were all sitting in this yurt and got made tea, and she also made cheese as well for us, which was really amazing.
Oh, well, how did the tea taste? Because I've always been curious.
It tasted very milky and very salty.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was really salty.
But sour?
It was not really, but it was weird, but it was fine. It was quite nice because it was really, really cold. Okay. So it was warm, it was milky, and it was salty. It was just bizarre, but quite a great experience. And I wouldn't say it was horrible. It was nice.
Nice.
Really, I guess what we're saying is the only place they don't drink tea is in America. USA aren't big on tea. Did you know that?
I know that they're big on coffee.
Yeah, they're really big on coffee, but they're not so big on tea. So I think
there is a movement of craft tea happening in San Francisco and Seattle, those areas.
Oh, with the cool kids.
With the cool kids, they're learning Gong Fu Cha and all of that. They're getting into it.
What's Gong Fu Cha?
It's like the one method of making tea where you have, the tiny little teapot and the tiny little teacups. You pour water over everything, and it has a beautiful ceremony to it.
Ah, right. Yeah. I've seen those little teapots and teacups in the souvenir shops in Hong Kong. Yeah. They're very common souvenirs, aren't they?
Yeah.
In your post that you wrote on Facebook, you mentioned that much of your life has been spent about obsessing about stuff. Can you share a bit more about that, what you mean by that, and how has drinking tea helped with that?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's me in particular or just the condition of being a human, but I always find that my mind is just always on, never stops. If I actually stop and listen to what my mind is doing, kind of just observe it as an interested onlooker, and it's kind of crazy because I'm like, oh, I'm planning what I have to do next. And I'm thinking about what I just did. And I want to plan what I want to say next. And I'm thinking about what I just said. And then I'm thinking about what the other person said. I'm thinking about this, but what if this goes wrong? And actually, I really need to do this. Ooh, and it's just all over the place all the time. And it repeats itself, my mind as well. So I'll have the same thought over and over again. I'll have whole conversations with people inside my head that never happen outside in reality. Right?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I understand that.
And it's completely draining. Yeah, as I said, I've done a lot of meditation work and I've done meditation retreats, and they've been so great because then I can let my mind stop. And as soon as the chatter quietens down, I suddenly get this deep sense of peace. And I always like to describe it as, the ocean, right? So on the top, the waves are chopping around, everything's always changing and everything's happening. And there's, day and night and weather and rain and all of that. But when you go under the water, no matter what's happening on the surface, it's quiet and the water holds you. I love that feeling. So that's the kind of feeling that you get when you meditate and you go deep inside yourself and you just find that peace. And yeah, so that's what I kind of feel when I'm drinking tea. It physically calms my body and clears my mind. But also when I stop to actually brew it properly, again, like I focus on my movements, and it's just a really quick, easy way to get present. Because I'm like, okay, I'm doing this now and it's enjoyable. I don't have anything else to do right now. So just calm down and make your tea.
That's such a cool analogy with the sea and being underwater, because I totally relate to that. Like before the pool shut with COVID, I was going swimming, and at the end I would just sit under the water. Like I'd literally just hold myself under the water by the rails just to have that peace and that steadiness and that calmness. And I absolutely love scuba diving because you have that same feeling. And I've just started meditation recently, and I get what you mean. So I can really understand how the ritual of having the tea and doing it properly, like you say, could get you into that same sort of calm, meditative, relaxed state. It sounds very cool.
Yeah, totally. So this is the book I think I also mentioned last time, The Power of Now.
By Eckhart Tolle. Yeah, tell me a bit about that.
But he just describes like two different ways of becoming present. So one of them is to watch your mind, just identify from your mind, step out of your thoughts and just watch it as if you were a second person looking at yourself. But that takes a little bit of practice and work to get it going on a regular basis. And I regularly, I need to dip back into that book every year or so because I find it hard to keep up, to keep the discipline of being present all the time. So the other way, he said, is just to take a simple action that you do every day, but put your full attention on it. So say you're walking upstairs, he says, just focus on the stairs, feel the movement, feel it in your feet, feel your legs moving. You don't have to do it super slowly. You can walk the way you normally walk, but you're listening to your body, you're feeling the sensations, you're smelling the air. And that one daily activity to just help you to become present is tea for me. And other people have other things like hiking and cooking or anything. Everyone has their own kind of activity that they feel most alive and most present in.
And I think one of the things about being in Hong Kong is it's such a fast-paced city and everybody's just zooming around and working late and having to travel and manage everything that we don't often, even if we have those things, we don't take the time to do them. And it's interesting because COVID is kind of forcing that back on us again, isn't it? We're now all kind of in semi-lockdown. We can only go out in groups of 2. We have to have a mask on and it's steaming hot, so it's easier to stay home than wear the mask. So I think people are probably now finding that sort of whatever it is that makes them feel like they can be present and relaxed. They're probably working on that more than they have for a long time. Would you agree?
Totally. I mean, I used to go out and have events pretty much every night. I think 2 events every night in Hong Kong. And I would always have that FOMO of which one do I go to or whatever. And then since COVID happened, 0 events. And I thought I would miss it, but I don't. I love the peace and quiet. I'm perfectly happy to stay indoors all day. I'm one of those rare people who just doesn't feel the need to get up and leave.
I'm the same. I was sort of dreading being in Hong Kong. And yeah, it is really hot over summer because we haven't been able to travel anywhere. It's actually been so good for my well-being, doing yoga and meditation and swimming and watching too much reality television. That hasn't been ideal. But it has been really good. And you know what? I'm a tea drinker as well. And particularly at work, actually. I drink a lot of tea at work. Excellent. It's interesting. I haven't been doing it as much at home. Is there a particular tea that you would drink for calming or relaxing, like a particular type of tea or a particular style of the way that you would drink it?
So all tea comes from the same plant, Camellia sinensis. And so it all contains that theanine that is very calming. So you're good to go with whatever drink you have. There is some discussions in terms of caffeine. There's actually a big debate. Some people say the lighter teas have more caffeine, so white teas and green teas, because they are less processed, so they have more of the natural caffeine of the leaf. Other people say that the darker teas, black teas, your pu'er, pole in Hong Kong that you have with dim sum, and maybe some oolong teas will have more caffeine because they are, especially if you break up the tea leaves and make it into a powder like a lot of tea bags have, then obviously there's more surface area, so the caffeine comes out more. So so there's no actual consensus that I can tell, but I just kind of check, okay, how does it make my body feel? So with green teas, I often feel more energized and uplifted. And with pu'er tea and black teas, I feel very grounded, like, okay, come back to earth, centered, that kind of thing. But yeah, there's no teas that make me hyper. I think everyone has different effects on your body, so you have to try it out and see.
Yeah. And in your post that I read, you said, I'm never really here, really seeing, really listening, really feeling. Is that related to what you were talking about before with how your mind doesn't slow down, or is this something sort of separate to that?
No, it's definitely the same thing. I think, especially with people, giving them my full attention, even if it's like a really relaxed setting where I have a friend over for dinner or something, we're meeting up with a friend for a chat, I rarely am 100% with them and 100% focused on what they're saying. Very rarely. And my mind is always, again, like, what can I say here that will make me look like a really cool person? Or what can I say here that will make them laugh? Or, when she said that, is she actually like, I don't know, does she mean this? This whole other conversation going on in my head. Or it could just be like completely random stuff like, oh, I really need to get home and do the laundry, or I left my whatever. And I'm not with the person. And I think that the result is that I'm not making deep connections with people. And that leads to a sense of isolation. Even if I have a lot of friends, I can sometimes still feel alone because I don't feel like I'm connecting on a really deep level. And I love that deep connection. That's what really fulfills me in life. So yeah, I think it's just the mind just doesn't stop. And if I'm not strict with myself and like, okay, I can get aware that I'm not paying attention to this person or not paying attention to what I'm doing. And I'd be like, okay, let the thoughts go and let's be here. And actually, even sometimes when I'm going through difficult times, I don't want to think about it because it's too painful or it's too stressful or it worries me too much. So I don't let myself even feel my own emotions. Like, no, I don't have time to feel that right now. Or I don't want to feel that right now. So I'm going to think about the future or think about the past or run away.
Does drinking tea help you then gain that focus and that ability to connect and listen? And do you need to have somebody with you, drinking the tea with you, to make that connection? Or does just that ritual of drinking tea daily make you more present, as you said earlier, so that then when you go on throughout your day, you're able to listen and feel and connect better with others? Or is it both?
No, I think that's it. It's like if I can have a little tea session where I am present to myself and I'm like, hey, okay. And it really helps with tea because I slow down, I smell it first. I really taste it slowly. I look at the beautiful colors because it's such a beautiful experience, such an enjoyable experience. You don't want to rush it. So getting present to my senses through drinking tea helps me to become present. And then I try to do a bit of reflective, either journaling or just meditating where I'm just checking in with myself. Okay, how's my body today? Oh, I've got a backache or whatever. That's okay. What else? What am I worried about? What's going on inside me? And I just kind of have that few minutes to check in with myself and just like, hey, Mel, are you okay? What's going on? How are you feeling? And then once I've had that with myself, I feel a lot more filled and also, present so that I can give myself fully to other people and, be more aware throughout the day of the times when I'm not present and I just remind myself, okay, come back, come back, come back. It's not like 2025, it's 2020.
Yeah, stop worrying about things that haven't already happened. Yeah, stay in the present.
Like dreaming of the stuff I want to do after COVID goes away, because who knows when that will be.
I know. This could be our new normal. We could be in this for quite a long time. We just don't know. So we have to really adapt and adjust. Like I'm wondering whether I'll be teaching in a mask for a long, long time when we even do get back into school. Why do you think for people out there listening, what advice would you have for them about why it is important to wake up out of our thoughts and to be fully present? Why is that helpful for us as individuals, not just for you, but for the rest of us?
I'll repeat what Eckhart Tolle says, and he's the kind of wise person behind all of this. I think as humans, we are so much more than our mind, and we are so much more than our thoughts. And I think when we live in a way that we are identified with our mind, because what the mind does, it labels, it categorizes, it judges, it describes, right? Which is great for some uses, but it's not great when it comes to people. So we're walking around in nature, and instead of feeling and connecting with nature, our mind is saying, oh, this is an interesting tree. It looks like an old person. And it's like got a whole thing. You're like, that's not useful right now. Can you be quiet, please? Because I just want to feel the tree, right?
So it takes us out of our heads into our hearts or into our feelings. Oh, that's really lovely.
Helps us to connect with the earth, with each other, with ourselves, and just to live, from a space that is much bigger than analyzing things all the time. And I think as humans, I guess, when we're run by our minds, there's a lot of suffering, because often the pattern is when I get this, ABC, or when this happens, I will be happy. And then the thing that you think will make you happy happens, and you are happy. Great. And then that same thing will inevitably make you suffer again. So it will have its own challenges, and it will have its own whatever issues, problems, difficulties to deal with. And then you'll find yourself complaining about the very thing that you wanted before and you now have. And I think especially our minds are jumping past future, past future, past future. So it's a constant split in ourselves, because we don't want what we have now, and we want what we don't have. So
yeah, that is so true, isn't
never
it?
Ending. Never ending.
Yeah. And I guess in a way, it's a way of being satisfied and happy with your lot rather than wishing or hoping for something that may not make you happy or is not attainable. You mentioned in your post as well, and I really love this, that you said that tea is a highly effective teacher. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said earlier, that you just can't rush it. And I'm just getting into tea. There's a whole world of tea, and there are people who are masters and people who have really gotten to know tea in a really deep way, which I have not yet, but I'm learning from them, and I love what they have to say. So they often say, each tea has its own personality. And what I found when learning to brew tea is that there is no one right way. And this is highly frustrating to me, because I just want someone to tell me a formula to get it right. Same as in life, I just wanted someone to tell me a formula that I can follow to get life right. The same thing with tea. I want to get it right. So I'm always asking, what's the temperature? What's the time? Blah, 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 blah. And it's not a formula. So every time they reply to me and they, whoever I'm talking to, the tea expert, they'll always say, you need to feel it. You need to test, experiment, get to know the tea. So try this tea at 80 degrees for 1 minute. How does it taste to you? Okay, great. Try it at 90 degrees for 30 seconds. How does it taste? So you can brew tea in a myriad different ways and you'll always get a different flavor. And that's like mind-blowing to me.
And also, as individuals, we would all have different likes. So somebody might like the 80-degree tea and somebody might like the 90 degrees. So just like life, we all have different personalities and different likes and dislikes. So I think it just shows that it's an individual thing.
So that's another thing. So it teaches me that there's no one right way in life. It teaches me not to judge because I'm like, is this tea better than the other tea? No, it just depends on your preference, right? And it depends on how you brew it. And it also teaches me patience because I am a highly impatient person. So it does force me to slow down. And also, it's just that kind of experimental where you have to really be with it and focus on it. Because there's for example, if I'm usually you brew tea for 1 minute, say, that 1 minute, sometimes I can't even stop for that 1 minute. And it can seem like an eternity in my head, 60 seconds. So in my head, I'm like, you know what? I need to make this 60 seconds useful. I'm going to go and do something else, and then I'll come back. And every time I do that, I ruin the tea.
Isn't that interesting? And you've got to be present in this ritual. And that really leads me to my next question is why are rituals so important in so many different cultures? And why is this ritual of making the tea so important?
That's a really good question. I think when we experience something really good, for example, going on a meditation retreat or doing something like a yoga class, the conclusion that we come to at the end is usually, you know what, this is so good for me. I need to do this every single day for the rest of my life. Because then it will solve everything. It'll be great. I want to do yoga every day. I want to do exercise every day, or I want to do meditation every day, or I want to, whatever it is. And the reality for me, especially, I find it really hard to stick to that discipline of doing stuff every day. I remember ages ago, I was practicing Kundalini yoga, which is something that often requires you to repeat one movement or a few movements, 3 movements, the same 3 movements every day for 100 days. And if you skip a day, you have to start from 1. You can't just carry on.
Oh my God, that sounds awful.
Right?
But that's a ritual, isn't it? 100 days of ritual. And it's getting you in the habit.
And I tried and failed so many times. It took me a whole year just to do 100 days in a row. So tea, because it's enjoyable, because I'm addicted to it completely. Every time I just don't feel like I'm okay until I've had my tea sometimes. So because my body is has an urge for it, it's actually much easier to sustain it every day because I don't have to push myself to have tea. So enjoyable. I'm of course I want a cup of tea. So it takes away the barrier of discipline. You
mentioned in your post as well that you used escapism via your imagination when you were stuck in situations that you hated when you were a child. Can you give me an example of how you did that? And then do you use tea now as a form of escapism?
Interesting. Have you ever read or watched Anne of Green Gables?
No, but I know it. My gay brother has.
I loved it as a kid. But anyway, her thing is to obviously she's an orphan, so she's in a really hard situation. And she imagines that she's this princess or this maiden or this beautiful. Anyway, so that's kind of the analogy, the closest analogy. So I went to a boarding school that I really didn't like. And I would always imagine myself in a different country. I wanted to be beautiful and thin. And I wanted, so I would just create this other imaginary life in my head. And I would do that so often because obviously my imagination was much more enjoyable or pleasant than the present, like my reality. And, my dad would often say, he would wonder to himself, because even when I was at home, he would walk past my room and see me sitting on the ground in the middle of my room with just my head up looking at the ceiling, just off in my thoughts. And he was like, this girl's weird.
But was it a coping mechanism for you as a child because you were quite unhappy?
Yeah, completely. And then tea is, for me, it's like kind of the opposite of escapism, because it brings me to reality and it makes me actually check in with how I am feeling, what is going on, what I am sensing. So it really brings me out of imagination and into reality.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. So it's actually helping you be more grounded and get out of that sort of fairy tale world that your head was in when you were a child.
That's quite fairy tale world.
Yeah, that's quite helpful. I want to read a section of your post which inspired me to ask you to come on Hong Kong Confidential. So you wrote, since then, my safe haven has been the future. I'd be happy when XYZ happens, but time and time again, the future let me down, and my life was reduced to half alive state of waiting in perpetual denial of reality. A much truer haven, I'm learning, is now. The eternal present moment. Life is so much fuller and sweeter when I can stop my mind long enough to pay attention to it. So I come home to this moment right here, waiting for the kettle to boil, waiting for the water to cool, waiting for the tea to steep. That's so poetic and inspiring. It's really, really beautiful. Can you share more about this with me?
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad it resonated with you.
Yeah. Oh, your whole post, I was just like, oh my God, I've got to get her on this podcast. That's just fantastic. It really did capture me in a big way. And that's just, I think, so beautiful. In fact, I wish I could have read it a little bit more beautifully. But tell me a bit more about it.
You're really on the same journey then, it sounds like.
The future letting you down and that kind of notion of your life reduced to a half-alive state of waiting. It's like you're looking for something, you're searching for something that you haven't got and that you're not fulfilled. And then tea can bring you back to the present and make you value and appreciate what you have. That's what I got from it.
That's it. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I think in our culture, when someone is upset, the thing that we say to them is, don't worry, it'll get better soon, or it'll pass. And there's a lot of truth in that statement. It's just that for me, when people tell me that, it's kind of like, okay, then the way that I learned to deal with difficult things is to shut my eyes and wait for them to pass. That is not living fully.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think also I went through a stage of my life where I was really into things like the law of attraction, like different kind of conscious manifestation techniques where you are taught to imagine and visualize what you want to create in your life. And again, this is something that is a really good tool and it works and there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But I think the way that I used it was it's like I put all my chips into that. I staked everything on that outcome. There's lots of things, trying to earn more money or being successful or being in a relationship, all this kind of stuff. I would imagine and visualize so strongly. So for example, trying to visualize myself being in a relationship, I was following everything that people would tell me to do. But that meant that I'm walking down the street and my hand is feeling empty. And I'm imagining an imaginary partner holding my hand. And it makes it even more painful that is not a reality. I think I took it too far or I didn't practice it in the right way, but I felt like too much stake on what I wanted rather than what I have now. And yes, I would do gratitude. Oh, I'm so grateful for everything that I have now. It's wonderful. But I was always like, I'm not going to be happy. I wouldn't let myself be happy until something that I wanted to achieve was done or was real. And of course, that meant I would never be happy.
Yeah.
So it's just sometimes the future is not the place to stake all your hopes on. I think sometimes it's really important, especially for people going through really hard times, they need to know that it will get better soon. And that's fair enough. But when you completely deny your current situation or your current emotions or whatever, and you put yourself completely into an imaginary future that might never happen, the quality of life just goes down, and you just don't want to live life until this reality, until your wishes have come true, basically.
Look, I can totally relate to that. I've spent the last 20 years trying to manifest the love of my life, and he ain't anywhere to be found. But,
right.
And in this whole COVID thing, it highlights the loneliness, doesn't it? Because you're alone day and night. You can't really go do anything. You can only hang out with one other person outside in the steaming heat. And, and all of my friends have partners, and it's just like, well, this sucks, but I have learned to let go of that dream. And I think that being in the present or shifting the focus of what's important and changing my priorities has really helped a lot. And I think that you put it so beautifully, you can try all you want to manifest these things, but if that's all you're holding on to, then you're going to miss the beauty of what's going on in the moment or what you do have or what's great about your life. And that's things like friends and jobs and experiences and meeting people and podcasts and talking to others and connection. Like that's a big thing, which you said you were missing, but connecting with people is just so powerful, isn't it? So
it really is.
Yes, I love what you just said now. It really resonates with me. I was nearly getting tearful.
Oh. No, I feel you. And I think also it's like being present is scary, man, because we have a lot of negative emotions and a lot of shit is happening out there. We don't want to pay attention to it. I don't want to. But then the ironic thing is when you pay attention to something, it's like the only way past is through. So
that's true.
Especially with emotions, when you actually give them the attention that they are asking for, that's what helps them subside. And that's what helps you move through into something deeper. And, just being present to things like grief, sometimes there's nothing you can say to make someone feel better. And there's nothing you can say to make yourself feel better. But just by saying, hey, I see you are suffering and I see you're really sad about this right now, and that's okay, is so powerful. Because as soon as you are actually fully seen and heard by another human being or even by yourself, so much of that pain subsides and kind of like dissolves into a weird state where you're peaceful, but you're not happy. You're peaceful though.
I think that's so true. And there's also just a sense of, like, I've been able to move from anxiety into calm by doing some of these things that you're talking about and by having my own rituals, which have been yoga and meditation and swimming. And not working has helped. I'm on summer holidays, so not having that level of stress, which brings on your cortisol as well. It heightens all your cortisol in your body as well. So just taking the time to be present, be calm, be in the moment, try to look after myself and focus on my well-being, it really has changed the way that I feel dramatically. Like I just have lost this anxious ball in my chest that I was carrying for quite a while. So it's quite interesting. I imagine that your rituals and what you're doing around tea could have the same kind of impact. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. It's so true, though. A ball in your chest, that's exactly what anxiety is. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it is.
Same thing.
I was off having all these tests thinking I was having a bloody heart attack or getting lung cancer. But in actual fact, it was anxiety because I've never had it before. And never, ever have I had it. So I've only just got it in the last couple of years. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
During COVID is experiencing much higher levels of anxiety right now.
Yeah, that really did have an impact on me in the beginning. I don't feel the same level of anxiety now as I did in the beginning, but it's been a combination of the book and the podcast and working so hard and menopause and being alone, and all of those things have played into my anxiety. So it's very situational. I don't feel that it's something that is innate, but it has really been a lesson for me to take care of myself and to be present and to take time. Like it really just, and getting out into nature and doing things like that. And it's just so important. Breathing, the breathing that you do in meditation or yoga, it's just so calming. It's amazing. And also interesting because I rely on tea when I'm at school. I feel like it is a little ritual that keeps me calm. Like I'm always walking around with a cup of tea. And
Right?
Interestingly, I haven't had so much of it while I've been on holidays.
Way to go for like prioritizing yourself and actually making those self-care routines and important enough to give time to, because I feel like that is really what changes the quality of life for most of us.
Yeah, well, it's been forced upon me by COVID. I wouldn't, honestly, if COVID wasn't happening, I would have been traveling to the US and going to podcast festivals, and I wouldn't have done it. So It's actually a positive silver lining to what's going on, which is obviously a terrible situation in the world. But it's interesting how we can learn things from adversity.
Definitely.
Yeah. How do you think that this has changed your life, this newfound passion for tea?
It's brought me a lot more joy. It's just something that I really love and I really want to learn more about. It's also connected me to a beautiful community in Hong Kong who I think are all amazing people. So I mentioned Plantation. There's also 5 elements. They do tea meditations, which are really beautiful.
Oh, I'd like to try that.
Definitely. You should definitely, when it's possible to, then.
Yeah, I will. Please invite me. I'd love to come and try that. I really would.
Yeah, they do bowl tea, which is like very simple. Just put some tea leaves. It's those elements of water, tea, earth, the earthy bowls, and the fire from the water. So it's very beautiful, simple, but very deeply profound. And yeah, I really love their tea meditations. And just the whole community of people in Hong Kong and online who are all dedicated to this and learning all together in their different ways and sharing all these beautiful things and proverbs and all sorts, this whole tea world that I just love. There's also one of my friends is called Mona, and she runs her own tea company where like she's actually visited all the tea farms herself and she's sourcing the tea and selling it online and teaching people how to drink it and enjoy it. And I think that's what I want to do with my Instagram, Let's Have Tea. I kind of started it because I want to keep recreating those moments where people stop and learn to be with each other, because this is something I'm learning and I want more of in my life. So yeah, me and my friend Mona from Teawala, we got together and we did like tea hikes. So you walk along, you go on your hike, and we have these little travel tea packs with the guy one and the whole set. Bring my thermos of hot water, get to the top of the mountain, find a shady spot, like break out the tea. And it's beautiful because other hikers along the way, they'd be like, they come and sit and join us for tea. I'm like, hey, would you like?
Oh, how nice.
So nice. We have a little picnic with fruit and nuts. It's a really great way to hike.
That is amazing.
And we have like tea in the park. There's all these beautiful parks in Hong Kong. And just bring a picnic blanket and share some really good teas, because there's tea and then there's really good tea. And it's endless. There's people who do courses to become tea masters. And some of the exams that they have to do are to taste and distinguish between 200 different types of tea. So it's endless.
Wow.
world. And I think that's also something that I love about it. It's so abundant. The tea just keeps flowing and there's always enough for everyone. And I think that's also something that I love.
And it's not expensive. It's accessible for everybody, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. I think something that you just said there resonates really strongly as well, is about connecting with others. And I think that's something that COVID has also taught us, because it really has been very isolating globally for people. And I think going through COVID reminds us how important friendships and connections are. And it's lovely to just remember that.
Totally. And I always like to, when I have a tea circle, when I do some tea with friends or friends of friends, I always like to have little questions to ask each other. So they kind of pull a question from a pile. And sometimes it's like really deep and like, what is your worst fear? Or sometimes it's just like shallow, like, hey, what do you do to enjoy yourself every day or whatever? But it really helps them open up, and you suddenly get to know this person so much better by listening and letting them share on these random things.
And you know what? That's another reminder of a skill that's really important, is really listening. And we are so busy and thinking of the next thing that we've got to do that we often don't just sit and listen and take in what's being said to us. And that's why podcasts are so wonderful, because they're audio and they're all about listening. So that's so cool, isn't it? Yeah. Oh my God. We're just so profound. And Mel, what do you think that you've learnt most about yourself through your love of drinking tea and being a part of this community?
So, as I said before, I know I can see how I'm such an impatient person and how I really want an answer and a formula. I didn't actually realize that about myself before. I also can see, because there's a lot of different type of people in the tea world, most of them, or many of them, are very scientifically minded. So they go into great lengths researching and learning about all the types of how tea is processed, all the fine details about how to brew it. You know, they go and collect water from the mountain to brew their tea with. And I don't think my mind is quite that detailed or that scientifically oriented. I think what really drives me or gets me going about tea is the way that it brings people together, and the fact that everyone can relate to tea in some way. It's just so interesting, especially working at the tea house, because I'm serving tea to all these different people and they're opening up to me and sharing, and they have all these different connections and memories with tea. Then we connect on that level. And I think that's really beautiful. So yeah, it's helped me to kind of get better habits in my life, slow down, connect with people more, and meet all these wonderfully interesting people.
Oh, that's so amazing. That's so beautiful. It just warms my heart hearing you talk about it all. It really does. It's just been such a beautiful conversation. So thank you so much for sharing all of it with me. And how can my listeners find you if they'd like to find your Instagram page or the Plantation Tea Room?
Yeah, so Comfort Tea Plantation, we're open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for now. And I work on Saturdays, and it's close to HKU MTR station exit B1. And I'm on Instagram, so I'm just trying to share the joy of tea and get more people to explore it for themselves. My Instagram handle is Let's Have Tea, let's.have.tea. Also, can I recommend a book?
Yes, please. Tea is for everyone. Who's that by?
Are you reading it backwards? Manual Media.
Okay, great. Tea is for everyone.
Yeah, and it's actually made by Hong Kongers right here. So it's the simplest, but also most comprehensive introduction to tea and to Chinese tea, especially for Westerners who want to learn how to brew tea in Chinese way. And if you want to get it, you can use my discount code, which is Let's Have Tea, all caps lock, and you get $20 off your copy. you just go to manmoremedia.com.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Well, if you send me the link to that, I can put it in the show notes. Okay.
Cool. Awesome.
So that'll be amazing. So thank you so much, Mel. It's been absolutely wonderful, as good as I knew it would be talking to you again. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for your interest and for letting me share on this topic. I would love to come and give you a copy of the book and like a tea session. So let's wait until it's safe to do so, and then I'll be right over.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I'd love that. And for my listeners out there, if this is something that you've really enjoyed, which I know you have because I've loved it, can you please share this podcast with your friends and family? And if you could go to iTunes to rate and review us, then that will help Hong Kong Confidential go up the charts, and it will also help people find Mel and her love of tea and her Instagram page and Plantation Tea Room. And if you'd like to sponsor Hong Kong Confidential for as little as $1 a month, you can go to patreon.com/Hong Kong Confidential, and you can hear the answers to Mel's 4 secret questions that I'm going to ask her now and put on Patreon. So it's a little bit like your questions that you have at your tea ceremonies. It's the same kind of thing, which is really interesting. So hopefully our listeners will go and sponsor Hong Kong Confidential at Patreon, and they'll be able to hear your secret questions and the secret questions of about my last 40 guests. Okay, so we're going to finish up here now at Hong Kong Confidential, Mel, and I'll see you over on Patreon, okay? So thank you again. It's been a fantastic podcast.
Thanks, Jules. Thanks for your time. It's been awesome.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.